and welcome to Expansive and Unscripted Live. Today I am here with Van, and I'm excited about this conversation. They have some really incredible programs in the works that we're going to explore and just have some more in depth conversation about gender and neurodivergent identity. Van is a queer, non binary, trans, socialized as female person of color who is autistic and has dynamic disabilities, amongst many more historically excluded identities. They're duly licensed as a marriage and family therapist and an LPC, and they are just a fierce advocate for gender affirmation and protection and equity. I feel like those are important elements to talk about in these times, as well as neurodivergence. So, welcome, Van. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm doing all right. I'm excited to see where our conversations takes us, and hoping that it creates safer spaces for others so people can do their own learning and or be validated in their own identity.
Awesome. What I like what you just said, conversation about building safer spaces. What Let's talk about that and explore like what does it mean? I think first of all, some people might not be as familiar with why are you using the word safer versus safe space. So let's start there.
Well, because the reality is that there is no such thing as a safe place, and that is where our
Mm,
fragility and our ego comes into play, where we think that we've created an element, a space that's going to be safe for everybody, but our privilege prevents us from being aware of the harm that we're actually causing and engaging in, even if it's unintentional. Our intentions are not what's prioritized, the impact is all that matters. So I might intend to be kind, I might intend to be accepting. And when I engage in a micro macro aggression, maybe I say, hey guys, or maybe I say, the
mm,
next steps, or maybe I say, I look forward to seeing you, or if I say, what's your gender, right? These are all micro macro aggressions that are really harmful and oppressive, and it makes the space unsafe for many folks, whereas many folks who it doesn't directly impact them, it might feel safe. So being intentional that if I'm working towards creating a safer space, that's communicating that I'm working within the tools that I have in the moment that I'm in with the knowledge I have, while also holding that willingness to continue to learn and do better, and holding that I will mess up, while also communicating that I'm willing to be accountable
mm,
for any harm that I have caused. So the moment that I read somebody has a safe space is the moment that I know that this absolutely is not safe for
mm,
me, because it communicates that this person believes they've arrived, they've done all the work, I've
mm.
taken all the trainings, and the reality is that there's no amount of trainings out there that could truly make us a safe person.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective and the. I mean, I feel like that's just what what they would call right in the clinical mental health world like cultural competency of just being aware of our potential for unawareness, right? And the fact that um, like none of us can escape having mm, those places where we don't know everything because, well, for folks who are raised in the US, I guess at least, like we are socialized under this like white supremacist, ableist, racist, capitalist system. Um, and so all of us are have to be in process of unlearning to different degrees. So I appreciate that. I feel like how you described it is like it's almost like an invitation to enter into a commitment to continual growth with other folks.
Absolutely, and I lean more towards, right. So when we think about even cultural competence, that's saying I'm competent enough in cultures. When the reality is that we want to be engaging in cultural humility. That I
Mm,
will not know everything, even within my own identities, and that white supremacy is everything that you listed, and it goes just beyond the US. People often think that it just has to do with skin color and race, when the reality is everything you have to learn about is white supremacy,
mm,
misogyny, transphobia, ableism, ageism, fat phobia. It exists, and it exists beyond the U.S., where the U.S. is a younger country, right?
Yeah.
And we've absorbed and learned this from all these other spaces that we've appropriated from, and taken from. And I think that's a big thing that people don't realize is that 100% of us everywhere engage in white supremacy. The
Mm.
only thing that differentiates us from, no, because we're still problematic, but what can really help shift that is being willing to admit it and constantly being willing to learn the ways in which what we're saying, how we're behaving, what we're wearing, even the how we're capitalizing our names, like just every single way, learning and unpacking to be able
Mm.
to. I keep wanting to say to stop doing it, but the reality is we'll never stop. We'll just have to keep learning new ways to make it safer and practice that cultural humility.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm learning to incorporate more terminology like harm reduction, right? Like we can reduce harm. I don't know that it's possible in my lifetime to eradicate harm, right? Like completely. So those words like we can make a safer space, but it's not going to be like purely safe because there's all these factors and elements that you just named. Um,
I, oh, sorry.
oh no, go ahead, please.
I do agree with you, and I do think that there's a heavy focus on that and minimal focus of action items as to reparative, restorative, and healing justice. So I feel like there's still a lot of like coddling around ourselves of like, I'm going to make a mistake and that's okay, and I'm going to work better to not do it. But so little into what is that reparative, restorative, healing justice? How do I actually take accountability? What do I do when the other person doesn't want to engage in that process? It doesn't mean that now it's over and I just learn from it. um, People often think I just say I'm sorry, but what am I sorry for?
Mhm.
Really, really taking the actions or statements or behaviors or the engagement that I've done, unpacking where it came from, how it's rooted in white supremacy, what isms and obias did I engage in, what will I do differently. Also being there to support the other person in what they're going through and not justifying our actions. It doesn't matter if we didn't mean for that person to feel that way. All that matters is they're feeling that way and holding that space and engaging in what needs to happen for that person to feel like repair has been engaged in. And it's not a one time thing, it's not a one time conversation. It might come up 10, 15, 20 years from now, and still being willing to hold that space and not, why can't you just get over it? Right? That gaslighting.
Mm.
That was 10 years ago. I said, I'm sorry. I gave you $100, whatever it might be. That does, if the harm is still there, the harm is still there.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, our intention is not it doesn't carry as much weight as the impact. Like we can intend positive things all day long, but if the impact is harm, that's what we're accountable to. And what we need to be learning how to do this. I'm curious if you can share more about restorative justice process that um, either you've facilitated or you've been a part of. What does that look like? So you said kind of what it doesn't look like. Can you share more what it does look like?
So it's all gonna be based on like the individual, right? So could I give maybe an example of something that maybe came up with us that, right, the intention wasn't there, but the impact and all that, and what that might look like. And again, this is not applicable to everybody, but let's just say we say, what would that look like? Somebody calls us in on, hey, it's ableist. I can't see when we're looking at what does that look like. It really erases my reality, but the person might not say that. The person might just say, you're being ableist, or
Mm.
fuck you, that's ableist, right?
Mm.
And so much of us get so caught up in that tone policing. Don't talk to me that way. Don't curse at me. Don't yell at me. It's a saying we all use, right? That's our
Mm.
fragility. There is no accountability, and we're gaslighting the person's reality versus, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Doing our own work and better understanding, right? So often do we want to be like, would you mind explaining to me why that's ableist? And we're
Mm.
putting more labor on the other person, and we're also not even compensating them for sharing that information versus going and doing our own work. Why is this ableist? Where does it come from? What does it mean? And truly understanding. We can even ask the person in that moment, would you mind if I took the time that I needed to do my own work? And can I reach back out to you and connect? so that I can potentially engage in reparative healing justice, because you always want to have that consent, right? So
Yeah.
say yes, you do that work, you understand why it's problematic, you cultivate an awareness of every time you're using that word. In other words, looking forward to see you, can't wait to hear you, all these things that might not be relevant to what's actually happening, and shifting those languages, identifying a different word. I look forward to seeing you versus I'm excited to connect, right? I struggle with this language all the time. So I'm trying to find what is my script to insert so that when I notice it, I'm not getting stuck in shame of I'm such a piece of crap. How could I keep doing this? I'm so horrible versus I look forward to seeing I'm excited to connect with you. I've made that shift.
Mm.
Coming back, and thank you for letting me know that my engagement was ableist. That was really wrong of me. That was a way in which I was engaging in white supremacy and ableism. And I'm extremely grateful that you brought this to my attention. I better understand now that not everybody can look, and it can be really triggering and a constant reminder of the ableist world we live in. And moving forward, I'm shifting my language to this is what we're going to be shifting into, or these are the next action items, or whatever
Mm.
scripts that you've come up with. That's my experience. That's my thought process, right? Again, I have so much privilege that's going to prevent me from being aware of what I've just shared in that example is harmful. Well, holding that willingness is that I'm constantly wanting to learn to do things differently. And that process is different based on who you're interacting.
Sure. Yeah. I love that so much. Thank you for kind of walking us through this example, and thank you also for teaching me in this moment of things like it had not occurred to me, those phrases of see you later or I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So I appreciate having some new language, looking forward to connecting. Um, or I think you said I'm excited to connect something without even using like um, right sense words like seeing and walking and stepping kind of thing. Um, it's I will admit there are times when I'm like, oh man, there's like so many things to think of in terms of the language that I just automatically use because I've been using it for so long, and how the ways that I want to be mindful about the language that I'm using. Um, and so I know I can struggle myself with wrestling between like what's the hierarchy, or like could I just like let this go and not really put in effort to change this language. But then I always come back around to the fact that like it might not be significant for me, but it may mean so much to someone else. Like you said, if you see somebody talk about a program that's like this is a safe space, then you're like, nope, I'm out. That signals to me that they're not being conscientious about being in continual process. And so it's been an interesting journey for me to be in this process of deconstructing the white supremacist and ableist language that I'm used to using, and conscientiously replacing words that have just like automatically been part of my language or part of my slang.
And it is a constant. It is a constant. It's something that if we worked every second of every day until the day we died, we still wouldn't get it right. Right?
Yeah.
It's that constant learning, and that willingness. So, like I said, if I see something that's a safe, I know that it's most likely not, like 99.99% of the time. For me, I'm accustomed to leaning into that discomfort and opening myself up to potentially experience abuse. And so I will ask the person, I'll bring it to their attention, I'll call them and I'll say, hey, I see that you use this word safe. Here's what it communicates. Here's how it reads. Here's how you can shift the language. 99.9% of the time is the response justifications, fragility, gaslighting,
Yeah.
putting it on me versus thank you for letting me know. Right? It took time and energy and effort for me to communicate and educate you for free, while also carrying all of the historical trauma of the 99.9% of the time where I'm going to experience psychological abuse. yet took that chance because I trusted you enough that you wanted to do better, that you were willing to do better, that this was not intentional. I'm saying, I know that this isn't your intention. I'm willing to take the burden of the impact so that this doesn't happen.
Mm.
And that's where I think so much more harm is. And that's where that restorative, reparative, that healing justice comes into play of now, what are you going to do with this information?
Yeah.
And I don't have to be nice about it. I am in the best ways I can. My point is that if people are angry at you or are yelling at you over harm you've caused, and the response is to tone police and tell them to talk to you in a more respectful way, the equivalent is if somebody ran over your toes and the car is on top of their foot and they're saying, "Get the fuck off of my foot." And you're like, "Do not talk to me that way. Do not yell at me. You could say that nicer." And emotional and physical pain are one and the same. There's no differentiation. Our pain is in our brain is our body. It's all one and the same.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to kind of specifically highlight what you said about, I think for folks who may be newer in spaces where they're deconstructing and unlearning things, that like you offered some wisdom around, look, if you're on the receiving end of feedback that somebody's giving about harm they caused, like, do it, like, check yourself kind of before you wreck yourself, right? In terms of, like, think about all that this person is putting on the line and is risking to share with you that they have been harmed by your words or your actions, and consider their that vulnerability before, hopefully, before anything else, and let that inform, like, I'll say it's me. If somebody comes to me, I need to be aware of, like, wow, okay, this person is taking a risk. They're doing something incredibly vulnerable. Whatever my feelings are about it, that's for me to process later. I need to be present and listen to them and honor the fact that they have taken this risk to share with me, not knowing how I'm going to respond, right? Unless they've had an experience with me before. And so I just appreciate that in terms of kind of mindful practices for a person who may be receiving feedback. Like facilitators of spaces, we have a responsibility to be open to that kind of feedback. And I know that I have received various feedback in the different spaces that I facilitate. And it has been a beautiful opportunity to build even deeper trust with folks who are sharing that feedback with me. It's helping me to grow as a person who is a holder of space. And it, whatever my feelings about it are for me to address elsewhere, not with the person who is telling me that, I've done harm, or there's better language that I could be using.
And I think that's really hard for most people. Like we get so caught up in our own heads, but it's that mind piece that you're talking about. Is that I'm focusing on mine. I'm not saying you, like all of us, right?
Yeah.
When I'm told I'm engaging in anti-blackness, I must be a horrible person. I'm not a horrible person, so I need to prove that I'm not. But I'm so focused on this versus, wow, you trusted me enough to share, or
Mhm.
if trust is the wrong word, but you shared that with me, and I cause harm to you. Like
Yeah.
whatever I have done, even if I don't understand it, harm was caused.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm always referring back to the systems. And for me, like, in the work that I have done in my own trauma healing, and being in this continual process of decolonizing and deconstructing, um, it's helpful for me to refer back to the system of, like, of course, that's something that is in me to say or to do because I was, like, basically indoctrinated in this in this way of thinking, and I am in the process of unlearning it. So it helps me to kind of like detach it from this idea that I'm a bad person, I failed. But like, okay, I was acting as I've been taught by white supremacy. So being in the process of unlearning that, I'm going to choose new things. I don't have to beat myself up over it. I don't have to feel like, a moral failing, and just recognize I'm a product of the system that raised me, and I am in continual process of like extricating those things from my system, from my way of thinking and being in the world.
And I know you know this. I just want to clarify for people who are
Mm.
listening, based on what you share, because it can land differently, is that what you're sharing is that process that you go through is an internal process. It's something that we never verbally say to the other person. We don't need to
Mm.
share with the other person that we've caused harm, that I'm part of the system. Of
Oh
course, I
yeah.
have to do this. I know you didn't mean that at all. I just want to make sure anybody listening doesn't take that up. Okay, I'm going to share this with the person. That again, that's like
Yeah.
sharing when you're on that person's foot. I've just learned to drive. I'm still in the beginning phases. None of that matters. You're on my foot and you've caused harm, and we don't even know the level of harm that's been caused.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Absolutely. So, one of the ways that I know that you put into practice the ways that you support compensating historically excluded voices and identities is through a conference that you organize. And it's called the Do Something Identities Conference. Yes, that I got that right. Tell me, you've done this for a few years. What year are we in this year?
So the first one was 2022. Because I'm fully funding it myself, and the first one I organized by myself, I didn't have capacity to do a second. So this is the second one. And there's many different layers to it. So I am sick and tired of being invited to the table and not compensated. Most conferences, including this year that I was accepted to, they said, okay, no problem, but you need to pay for a ticket, and tickets are 600, 1800, whatever the cost is. So you're asking me to pay, right? So that's that. This is how we keep our presenters cishet, white, able-bodied, neurotypical, more privileged identities, because who has capacity to have access to money majority of the time, right? Not 100%. So I'm sick and tired of hearing about all of these different conferences focused on creating safer spaces for trans and non-binary people, including WPATH and other organizations. But we're not invited to the table, and we're not compensated for our labor to present. So I wanted to model to the world that if you want to learn about a community, learn about the community by the community, and not just the same copy paste, maybe a binary, white, able-bodied, neurotypical trans person. We are not a monolith. Being trans is one aspect of our identity, right? So if you think about being cis and you're a cis man, being a man is only one part of your identity, but telling me you're a man doesn't communicate what you're like in this world, what you're like at work, what you're like with your family, what you're like with your pet, what you're like. Do you play, if you're good at sports, if you're good at ballet? I know nothing about you. I just know that you have an identity as male. It's the same thing with trans, non-binary, and many more non-cis identities. So, and I wanted to model that we also need to compensate. We need to pay people for their labor. So everybody, part of this conference is a paid trans and or non-binary person. And the topic isn't just how to work with trans and non-binary people, how to be trans and non-binary. We're taking topics that are constantly educated about that excludes most identities, because the focus is typically primary cis het, white, able-bodied, higher to middle socioeconomic status, and many more privileged identities. So we have a lot of topics around autism, neurodiversity, kink, poly, disability justice, anti-blackness in the workplace, voice. There's about 18 different presentations for medical health professionals, how to engage in an assessment and write a letter in just one session.
Mm.
It's for partners, families, friends, professors, attorneys, HRs, doesn't matter what your career is or your level of education or your identity. We have different tracks, including for our community, of how to engage in our own self-healing. Because we really wanted to bring in folks to help educate different ways to cultivate tools to create safer spaces so that we're not dying at such high rates. I think the
Mm.
last I checked, it's the CDC showed 1 in 3 trans people will attempt to die by suicide before the age of 18, and that number significantly reduces when they have access to medical care, people using their names, people using their pronouns, and just things that are basic, so basic that
Mm.
cis people get awarded to them for nothing. Like
Yeah.
there's no questions, conversations, gaslighting.
Yeah. Amazing. I want to go back to what you were saying at the beginning about compensation, because I've experienced this too with um, being a person with several historically excluded identities and also with privilege of whiteness and other elements. It's been challenging to navigate, like, oh, I would love to submit a presentation for this, a presentation proposal for this conference, but I have to already have purchased a ticket to be considered for this. And it always makes me wonder, so you're charging hundreds of dollars for the conference, but not compensating, like not even comping a ticket to the speakers, let alone compensating them for their time and preparation. Go
Don't
ahead.
forget that they have exhibitors, they have sponsors, they have donors, they have grants.
Right. Like these have to be huge budgets. Where is it all going? Like if it's all going to just a swanky location, I'm sure there is a lot of people who are like, hey, I would give up the location to be paid for my time to be here presenting. And so I just appreciate, I want to highlight how incredible of a commitment, investment, sacrifice on your part to be committed to folks are going to be compensated for their time in this do something identities conference, because there are institutions with massive budgets who are not even doing this, and it's part of I think of it in like the realm of when I think about neuro inclusion accessibility, it intersects with all of the other work of like collective liberation and equity and justice, right? And so it is a matter of equity that not only are trans and non-binary educators and speakers, presenters, subject matter experts, when they're not being compensated, there's like that deficit, but also the fact that when they are compensated, they need to be compensated equitably. So that needs to probably look like a higher dollar amount or a higher value amount than, a cishet straight white man is getting. So it's kind of like this double, well, I don't know if it's double. It's like a multiple deficit that's happening, right, with these spaces and people who are not compensating. I could go on about that, but I appreciate that you're doing something different
Thank you. Yeah.
to do something.
In the last I checked, you, the average yearly salary of a trans person is $10,000. The average yearly salary is $10,000. So here's a way that you could directly impact us. If we had the most famous person for your conference, you would find the budget for whatever that was. Even if we said that this person wants to be compensated 1,000, they'll find $1,000 for that person. But if we want $50 or a free ticket, my most recent one was for California Cal PCC. Professional Clinical Counseling Association. I got selected. There was no wiggle room for a sliding scale low fee for me to present. I think it was like 400 or 300 and some dollars ticket. And so that kind of loops into another thing that I wanted to share a few things more about the conference. So
Yeah.
this conference is it's an international conference. It's virtual for accessibility. On May 31st, 2024, PDT, time from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. The ways in which we're focusing on creating accessibility and are not limited to, these are just the ones coming to mind, is that we're going to have captions, we're going to have a recording. because different people have different ways of learning, and each presenter has an hour. So they do need to get through the material in an hour, but we also want people to have the ability to go back and rewatch, assuming there's no technical issues. And a big thing too is that financial accessibility. We will not turn anybody away, even if they have $0. Last conference, I think a couple hundred people came, and I want to say 80 to 90% of them were low fee, no fee tickets. It does put a lot of financial burden on me, because even though it sounds like it's virtual, it's going to cost nothing. There's so much overhead that does come with it. And so this year we're opening it up for folks if they can donate for tickets, or if they can sponsor, or we're even having an exhibit hall this year. So folks can come share about the different works that they do, whether it's a podcast or products or services. And if you go online, you'll see we're listing it really high, but we're also saying email us if you can't afford it, or if you can't afford anything. We're not going to deny you, assuming that you're not an organization who hates trans people. We're not going to let you come have an exhibit hall. Even if you had the money, you're not going to have an exhibit hall. So definitely encourage people to not just check out the website. Please don't leave because of the price. Ask us. We're not going to make you prove anything. If you email us and say, I can afford 1 cent for the ticket, we most likely will say, keep your 1 cent, give us your email, and we'll send you the link when we have it ready.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate that it's virtual. I am someone who is almost wholly virtual in all the things that I do. And that's another accessibility element too, right? You know, if the conference costs $600 and then I have to travel and get accommodations. So this is so much. I think about one conference that I went to, I think it was in 2020 or maybe 2021. I was a therapist conference, and it was all virtual. And I was like, this is amazing. I can actually show up. I have the bandwidth to engage and absorb information, because I'm not spending all of my energy on keeping all the sensory, environmental factors that are challenging to me like at bay. And it just allows me to be so much more present in a space of learning and interaction and engagement. With this conference, is there a way for attendees to connect with each other? Are there like chat spaces or networking spaces at all?
So unfortunately not. So again, like it's me and one other person this year, and those logistical pieces. We're most likely going to use Zoom. It's a platform I'm familiar with that can do the things I need. So I'm going to have to buy multiple Zoom accounts. The chat features will still be there, but we're going to want people to focus on the content, and it's recorded. So I'm not sure how that works. The chat, I'm pretty sure the chat's recorded, but we'll encourage people to share emails, connect with each other. We would never say don't connect with somebody who you met in here. And it's a packed day. Even our lunch hour will be screening the documentary. And so realistically, there's no breaks, but people can break when they want. And we have these built-in 10, 15 minutes between to get to the next one. And then the lunch break is also a viewing of the documentary, whether people choose to watch it then or not.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm excited about it. I can't wait. I'm excited that we get to put the word out to folks. So folks who are watching this, all the links and information that you need, the dates, everything that Van mentioned, that's going to be in the content of like the show notes. So you have that available. And what's something you're most excited about for this year's conference?
I'm really excited about a variety of topics, and I'm also really excited to see what has shifted. Right, there's so much learning I've even done in growth within myself from 2 years ago till now, and I think we only have 2 presenters who are the same from last year on different topics. But that leaves, I guess, 3 if you consider me. So that leaves, I don't know how to do math, but more than 10, more than 10, probably more than 15 brand new folks, new topics, new material, and I'm really hoping that more and more people are coming, taking something from the experience and sharing it with somebody else in a way that maybe makes a moment a little safer for someone else.
Yeah. Do you need volunteers? I know you said this event is virtual, but you said it's you and one other person. Are there things that you could use? I know you talked about sponsors and exhibitors, so that's one way people can help support. Are there any other ways that folks could show up in support?
Yes, it's a little complicated though because I won't take free labor from our community. So if you're trans, non-binary, and or another identity, and we don't get any sponsorship money or we don't get any donor money, and I don't have money to pay you, then I can't accept that free labor. It sounds kind of like it's not like I'm still trying to. It hasn't all landed for me. However, if you're a cis person, we will take your free labor. It doesn't mean that we allow you to go rogue and do what you want. It's very clear instructions. This is what you're doing. This is what you're writing, or what are your skill sets, just to make sure that we're still making sure that the material is as safe as we can with our own. Right now, we have, I think, three or four other trans and non-binary folks who are side contracted, like for between like 1 to 4 hours a week, if that, whether it's helping make a flyer or reading through something to make sure that like I didn't miss something that was problematic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a complicated answer, but
Yeah.
we need money more than anything so that we can hire more trans and non-binary people to help. We will take cis folks, free labor, including things like if you have a Zoom account, if you have um, a later account, or like different ways to help with marketing to
Mm-hmm.
reduce the costs on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so folks could be sharing information, sharing, reposting, you know, if they've attended before, talk it up, right? Helping spread the word, encouraging folks to attend. And I really appreciate, I am grappling too with, I don't, I don't want to accept free labor from folks, and also how do I respond to folks who want to like give back. And so I just appreciate you being just being open about that conversation, as many of us collectively are wrestling with how do we do this well, how do we not exploit anyone's labor, and yeah, make sure folks are compensated. So I just appreciate you. I learn so many things from you every time I talk with you, and like this is one of those things that we have this conversation, but I don't have compensation for you. But my hope is that there is a return on people getting to know you, people getting to know the conference. You're a therapist. Are there other services that you provide that you want folks to know about?
Yes, and before we go there, other services, I do want to loop back to like even like bartering is the same as compensation, right? So if
Mhm.
you're helping with marketing of this conference, and I forgot that piece that you did mention, share about it, talk about it, repost my post, follow me on social media, comment and engage with the material. I don't mean you, I mean like everybody
Yeah.
listening. I get very minimal engagement. I have a lot of, not, for me, it feels like a lot of followers, but not that much engagement, not that much reposting, not that much coming from it. And those are ways that people can help. And so, and looping back to you, Sharon, like you're not able to financially compensate me, is that our time is also worth, bartering is equally as important. So you helping talk about the conference, share with people about the conference, um, using different skills that you have to bring more awareness is equally as would to me is the same, because if I paid you to do that, I'd probably be paying you similar to what you might have wanted to pay me to talk on the podcast. And then to loop back to your other question, so my entire life has really been dedicated to how to make spaces a bit safer for folks, probably since the age of 3. And we all have different learning abilities or different ways of engaging and retaining information and absorbing it. So I'm constantly trying to identify what am I missing and creating something for it. So I made a documentary for people who are better at watching things as a call-in to help educate the realities of our community. It's called Do Something Identities, or Do Something Trans and Non-Binary Identities. I wrote an interactive workbook for people who are better at both kinesthetic but also reading. that's designed to help people identify the ways in which they've embodied their own internalized transphobia and ways to cultivate that tools to support themselves in their own growth and those in their lives. So it's for cis people and for trans, non-binary, many more non-cis people. I have recorded workshops for people who like to go at their own pace. I do live workshops. I do custom workshops. Um, for medical mental health therapists, I developed an app called No More GateKeeping, where it provides you the trauma-informed questions that you ask the client and you type in the answer. And in less than a session, once you're done typing it and entering, it populates the ready to sign and date letter to give to your client to access medical care. I developed a national list broken down by states where every provider on those states has agreed to write a letter in just one session. And it came out of, so Gallup exists where people agree to write letters for trans and non-binary people, but they refused to vet therapists and get them to agree to just one session. So some people were going on there and having to do 3, 6, 1 year therapy. And if we, again, bring in that statistic, 10 grand a yearly average salary. Therapy on a cheap scale is $100. For a year is $5,200. So we're asking more than the half of a trans and non-binary's average yearly salary to get access to what a cis person can do without that.
Yeah.
I've written articles, blogs, interviewed on podcasts, just trying to find different ways to provide education. There was one thing that I wanted to say, and I am totally spacing. I need like half a second to remember where it was going. It was the therapy. So in private practice, I have associates. Some people don't know, to become a therapist, you need a certain amount of hours by working under someone's license. So I have associates there who do who provide sliding scale therapy. I also, so that's both if you need therapy or if you're looking for a traineeship at an associateship. At Transgender Health and Wellness Center, I'm the director of behavioral health, and we offer 100% free therapy for everybody as long as you are in California. I also work with mostly trainees there, which means you're still in school. So if you're looking for a traineeship, please check it out. It's very simple. trans.health. That's the whole website.
Yeah.
So if you need groups, we're going to be starting a new neurodiverse group. We have a D&D group for Dungeons and Dragons. We have a group for partners, families, friends. We have groups for youth. We have groups for adults. All free, 100% free.
And that's for folks in California.
Thank you. Yes. Unfortunately, you do have to be in California to receive these services, including same-day assessment letter, one-day assessment letters. If you fill out the paperwork, we usually can get you in that day, if not that week. They do the assessment. I have to review the letter. They sign it off. You coordinate a time, and then you have your letter. So if everything lines up and you're following through with everything, it could be done in a day.
Yeah, that's incredible. Is all this different, like access to these different resources available through your main website, which is Van Ethan Levy?
Everything except for the Transgender Health and Wellness Center.
Okay, so I'll put that link as well. I want to make sure people have links so they can easily go to these places and find them and follow through. Yeah, I just wanted to check in. Was there anything else that you wanted to share? Be sure to share about the services that you provide.
It'll come to me when the second we end this call. So
Yeah.
But that big focus right now, because May 31st is coming up, is please, if you can't attend, share. If you want to attend and you can't attend that day, buy a ticket. You'll get an access to the recording for 90 days. If you don't have money, let us know. If you can't afford the full ticket, let us know. Same thing, exhibit hall donors. Even if you have $5 to donate, $5 with 100 people becomes $500,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can pay a percenter.
Absolutely. Well, and I feel like folks who have been historically excluded, we're pretty scrappy, and we can make $5 go a long way. So just do it. Just do the donation. Just get get a ticket. So yeah, I will again, folks, I'll make sure all this information is a part of the show notes. Um, there will be a chat when this broadcasts on Thursday, when this broadcasts. So if there's stuff that comes to your mind, I always think of like the most amazing things to say or ask after the conversation's over. So I always welcome that from other folks. As you think about this year and kind of the ripple effects of the work that you're doing, especially with the conference on May 31st, what is a hope that you have for for the impact of the work that you're doing?
Again, it's a very layered question. For folks that it directly impacts, I'm hoping that it can create enough shift to get out of this mentality that, knowing I am who I am, and that I don't have to do anything different to be who I am. So much of us are like, well, am I really a man because I like ballet? Am I really non-binary because I have a beard? Am I really a woman because my voice is too deep? Or the most common things are I can't wait to really be, right? You really are. We're not born an identity and then here's something that people get confused a lot is they don't realize how harmful the term transition is. Right? Transition is going from one state to another. If I'm alive and I'm dead, I've transitioned from alive to dead. We're not transitioning. I have always been non-binary. I came out of my parent as a non-binary person. It's the world didn't see me for who I am, and I didn't have access to language to that. So I didn't transition from female to non-binary. And so being able to find within themselves that we are who we are, and that there's no one way to do that. There are cis women who play basketball. There are cis women who do ballet. There are cis women who have their nails done. There are cis women who bite the crap out of their nails. It doesn't make them any less cis. So whatever your identity is, whatever you do and how you engage doesn't make you less than that. On the non-art community side, it's that same thing, but applying it to others as well. Just because your conceptualization of what a man, woman, non-binary person is doesn't mean that we now have to continue to perpetuate that harm and especially question people. Trust somebody enough who's sharing with you who they are. It doesn't matter if in the morning they say I'm male, afternoon they're female, evening they're non-binary. 5 seconds later, use he. 2 seconds later, she. Pronouns now use they. It's whatever feels affirming to the person is all that matters. And that discomfort that we feel, that fragility, is not more important than a person's livelihood. It might be annoying to have to remember different names and remember different pronouns, but we're just dealing with a bit of annoyingness while somebody is suffering from the harm that it's causing, which could lead to their death. So our lives are more important than your feelings.
Yes. Yes. 5,000% for forever. I love that. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Van. I, again, just am so grateful for the work that you're doing in the world, the ways that I learned from you, and I'm excited to share this conversation with others.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciated being here. And thank you for giving me so much time and space and a platform to continue to communicate what is so crucial and important to me.
Absolutely. All right, folks, stay tuned for another episode of Expansive and Unscripted next time. See you then.